See, if you notice, there is what you need to learn as part of the financial modeling exercise is the process that is being followed, the sequence in which we are creating this model. That is important for us, right? So once we will be able to list down, once we have completed 4 or 5 sheets, I will list down the steps that we have actually followed for the purpose of creating a financial model. All right. So focus more on this part because logically speaking, all of us know that revenue is nothing but sales price into sales volume. But the majority of the efforts in the real life are actually spent on justifying the inputs that we take and the sequence in which we have to create this financial model. And that requires this understanding of what the chronology is in terms of creating the model and what are the best practices of creating that kind of model. All right. So let's proceed now. In the file number 4, we are going to first of all begin with the revenue of cameras and then followed by accessories. So revenue is nothing but price into volume. So revenue is equal to price into volume. So it's going to be 2019 expected price into 2019 expected volume. So here we have 2019 camera price is 461 multiplied by the volume of 1.3 million items. And if you multiply these two together, it will give you the revenue as an absolute USD 603,770,242. But you need to divide this by 10 raised to the power 6 so that it gets converted to USD million. So have a look at the formula. It is price into volume divided by 10 raised to the power 6 because all the items in this sheet I want to show as USD million. Now, this is one important best practice that you must follow while creating a model, that each and every item in the financial model must be shown in a consistent unit. Like all the workings and all the output sections, you would see that I'm using USD million. There could be exceptions to this, like a price cannot be shown in million. A price needs to be in absolute USD. So usually you would notice that in the financial models, most of the times at the top itself, you would find this kind of a message stating that unless otherwise is specified, all the financials are in so and so currency and so unit. Like in this case, we are having USD million. So this is the kind of typical message which you would find in most of the financial models. And you try and follow it consistently. Assumption is a different sheet, so forget about the assumption part, but at least for the working section, for the output section, try and make sure that you use a consistent unit. Don't do this thing that in one sheet you have got USD million, some other sheet you have got USD thousand. Don't mix up the units, right? Have a consistent one. Let's look at the accessories segment now. So the accessories price is 41 multiplied by accessories volume. And again, divide that by 10 raised to the power 6. So for camera, it was camera's price into camera volume. For accessory, it is accessories price into accessories volume. And now you can add these two items to be able to see the total of these numbers. All right. So this completes the total revenue. And now you see that because I put the revenue out here, the formula that we put at the bottom for the research and development, sales, marketing, and G&A, all of that stuff you see, it has been populated. So now we can directly pull these values and put it in the P&L. So if I have to put the research and development, I can straight away go here and pick it from row number 35 and divide it by 10 raised to the power 6. Right? For the sales and marketing, I could pick it from row number 37 because now that has been populated here. So it's going to be. And finally, for the G&A, I can go to the row number 39 and pick it from That's this one. So these three items have now been populated on the basis of assumptions that we discussed in the previous sheet. And this is how they have actually come up out here. So creating P&L, to be honest, is pretty simple. Balance sheet requires a bit of juggling. So the revenue and operating costs are not that difficult. Fair enough. And the last operating cost component over here is the raw material cost. So what you need to do for the raw material cost, we're going to pick the same logic. That raw material cost is essentially the volume that I expect to sell. So for that component only, I'm going to buy the raw material. So it's going to be volume into raw material cost per unit. It's going to be equal to volume. So here in this case, one important point before I write the formula, I want to tell you, like revenue is coming from cameras and accessories. Similarly, the raw material cost would also be incurred on cameras and accessories. So please make sure that you kind of take the sum of both items and put that in the raw material cost line, because I haven't got that split of cameras and accessories for raw material here. So take it together. The first one is the volume of cameras, which is 1308, multiply by raw material cost per camera, plus number of accessories, multiply by cost per accessory, divided by 10 raised to the power 6. So this is how we work out the raw material cost. The formula is this. Once you have everything out here, you can put that by using the sum function out here. That gives you the summation of the entire operating cost. So this gives you what is the total operating cost, and we've also computed the total operating revenue, the delta of which is going to be EBITDA. The delta of that is going to be EBITDA, and we don't have an item beyond this because depreciation we cannot compute right now. We don't have the fixed assets part. Interest expense we cannot compute right now because I don't have the debt component, and the taxes also obviously would be computed once you have the profit before tax. Only then you can compute the tax amount, and obviously after computing taxes only you will be able to put the net profit after tax. So we'll put items that we can compute, but at least we can put a formula right now that this is equal to the delta over here, and the same logic applies to the other items also. That you can at least put the formula for the total or the subtotal part, and then we would only be left with depreciation, interest expense, and taxes. So these three that I'm going to highlight now on the left hand side in a different shade. So that is going to be the pending components for us. So these are the pending components: depreciation, interest expense, and taxes. These three components we would compute later once we have the corresponding schedules for all of them. All right. So let's at least write the formula for the subtotals. Okay, let me give a minute for you to work on it. I'll take a pause here. Please go on and complete it till this stage. All right, I think we can move on then. If there are no further questions, let me see. Fine. Abhishek, to your point, yes, the company's future doesn't look good from the EBITDA standpoint because the reason is pretty obvious. It's camera and the accessory segments. Both of these segments are going to be impacted heavily. So that definitely is going to be a grim situation for the company because it is going to only stabilize in the year 2022 or 23 because it's going to go down. Look at the sales. It's going to go down, right? That's why you see that it is not a good position right now. It's not in a good shape. But at least we know that what position will it see in future. So that's what it reflects. Now let's just put the placeholders for EBIT like this and place it for PBT and PAT as well. So PAT is equal to the PBT minus taxes, and PBT is equal to EBIT minus taxes, and EBIT as you see is this number. So this is how you could compute the EBITDA, EBIT, PBT, and PAT. So right now all of these figures are the same, but obviously they will change once you have the values in between. So once I've got the depreciation and I've got the interest expense and the taxes, it's going to change automatically out here. All right. That completes P&L to a certain extent. We are only left with depreciation, interest, and taxes, which we will cover up in the next file once we have the schedules corresponding to it. Let's move on to the balance sheet now, which is actually the interesting part. So let's move to the balance sheet out here in this file. And here in this balance sheet, you see only two sections are shaded in separate color, and those pertain to the working capital components like accounts payable, accounts receivable, expenses, and all that. What we need to do here, I want to show you the formula that we used before. We use this logic, right? Inventory days is equal to average inventory divided by annual raw material cost divided by 365. So let me just pick one of these formula and let us try to dissect this formula to see the logic to be followed now. Now somebody asked this question that what is this consistency? So this is what consistency implies. If I used inventory days formula as average inventory divided by annual raw material cost, then going forward also I should capture the same logic. It shouldn't happen that earlier I used raw material cost and now I'm using cost of goods sold or I'm using sales. Don't change the formula. Earlier I used average inventory, now I'm using only the closing inventory. Don't change the logic. Whatever logic you used before, pick that logic and use it now. Right? I'm going to copy this formula. I'll come back to this and insert a logic over here. And let's try to dissect the logic behind this. Inventory days. Now see, we have got three variables here. Inventory days, number two, average inventory, and number three, raw material cost. Out of these three, what is available? Let's say I'm talking about 2019. In the assumption tab, I've already assumed a number for inventory days as 105. In the assumptions, I have already got value of one variable, which is inventory days. That is known to me. Other variable is raw material cost. In the P&L, we have recently, just in this sheet, we have computed the raw material cost. We got the data for that as well. So 421 is the raw material cost. Now comes the average inventory. You see that for 2019, if I have to compute the average inventory, it is basically the average of opening and closing. Now opening is 175, but what is closing? I don't know. So this is the missing parameter. So we are going to use the mathematical logic of cross multiplication and be able to work out the final number. So let's write inventory days is equal to average inventory, which is basically, if I speak about, let's say 2019, let's say average inventory days of 2019 will be equal to the inventory of 2018 plus inventory of 2019 divided by 2. This is how we compute average inventory, isn't it? If I speak about 2019 year, this is how it's going to look like, right? So inventory days will be equal to average inventory of 18 and 19, which is basically 18 plus 9 divided by annual raw material cost of 2019 divided by 365. Now there are four variables now. Inventory for 2019, inventory for 2018, the days for 2019, and the raw material cost for 2019. These four variables, only one variable is missing, and that variable is, let me just highlight, this portion is missing. Other than this portion, everything else is available. What we are going to do, we're going to use the mathematical logic of cross multiplication and be able to work out the inventory for 2019. Right? So let's do a cross multiplication, and before that, this thing that you see in the denominator would also be subjected to some sort of mathematical computation. So it's going to be inventory days 2019. The portion in the denominator will come up. You will take multiply by 2, multiply by raw material cost 2019 divided by 365 is equal to inventory 2018 plus inventory 2009. So what I've done in this step, if you notice, this division by 2 will come to the numerator. So division will become multiplication. This division by raw material cost per day will come as a multiplication as raw material cost per day. And then on the right hand side, we are only left with 18 plus 19 inventory position on the balance sheet. So as you know, we need to work out this 19 number. It's this 18 portion will come on the left hand side and will kind of become this portion. I would cut from the right hand side and I will subtract it from the left hand side. So this becomes the final formula to be used for the purpose of 2019 inventory computation using exactly the same logic that we discussed before. You take the 105 inventory days, multiply by 2, multiply by raw material cost divided by 365 minus last year 20. That gives you 2019 inventory in the balance sheet. Right? So if you would like to actually flip it so that you show inventory 19 on the left hand side, you can do that as well. But broadly speaking, what you see on the left hand side is actually the formula that we are going to be using now. Right? This is the formula that we are going to be using now for computing inventory in the balance sheet. So let's pick this logic, come back to balance sheet and apply it over here. So what's the logic? The logic is equal to inventory days of 19 multiply by 2 multiply by, open the bracket, raw material cost, which is there in our P&L, 421 divided by 365 minus previous year inventory, which is 175. So I've taken 105 days of inventory into 2 into P&L H10, which gives me the raw material cost for the year 2019 divided by 365 minus $175 million of last year inventory, which can be dragged on the right hand side. You see, there is a drastic reduction in the inventory. Why? Because it's lower raw material cost. We have huge dip in our sale. That is leading to this decline in the inventory as well. So let's have a look at this formula. Let me put that here for ease of understanding. It is this one. Right, so the formula in highlighted cell indicates the one which has been included. So give it a try and let me read the questions in the meanwhile. Abhijit, what we have done is basically one and the same thing. If you simply take daily raw material cost into inventory days, then you are not using the consistent principle. Why I'm taking this inventory raw material cost per day into into this inventory day, multiply by 2 minus last year is because when I computed these values in past using the historical data, I had used the average inventory. And now also I want to maintain the same cost because I would like to ensure that I follow the concept of average inventory going forward as well. So that is the reason you saw that I began with the same formula. I dissected this, kind of explained that or expanded it, and then figured out the missing figure by using the mathematical concept of cross multiplication. That gives us this formula, wherein we are relying not only on the current year raw material cost and the current year expected inventory, but also on what has been the opening inventory balance for the current. That's how it is being worked out. Logic is you take days into 2 into per day of raw material cost minus the last one. Fair enough? Yeah, it will come to the same figure approximately, but the important point is consistency. So the formula that we used last earlier, we need to be consistent in terms of taking the same logic. So that's more important. And Pratmesh, looking into the trend does not look good. Yeah, obviously. Because see, what is the major driving factor for any company? Revenue, isn't it? You see, the revenue is going to go down. The volumes are going to be impacted heavily. We are seeing a 20% dip in the camera manufacturing and 50% dip in the accessory segment. Obviously, its revenue is going to take a hit. So the future doesn't look promising for this company. But at least it is showing that how it is going to be able to weather this crisis in terms of volume dip. So going forward, it won't be the same company which it was maybe in the last 3 years, but at least it will have a certain position. It has enjoyed very good business and volume in past, but probably not in the future. Still, it is good. It wouldn't be as big as it was, but now still it is good. That's how you see that what impact it is going to have on the valuation. That's what we see as we proceed further. That using these projections, what is the real worth of the company that you're able to work out? Because it is always said that the past performance is not a representation of your future performance. So when we do the valuation, we'll see that. Okay. Okay, so Dipankar, I see you have a question that when we're making a financial model, how much knowledge of accounting principles is needed because it changes by sector for insurance, for instance, for insurance and bank. True. Creating a financial model, let me put it this way, requires a solid understanding of the business model to begin with. But at the same time, when it comes to creating the P&L balance sheet and cash flow, we also need to be aware of the accounting rules and convention. Unless and until we are pretty clear on the concepts related to the accounting principles, we can't really move forward, right? So if you don't know the formula or the logic to be used for computing the inventory days, we can't write a formula over here. If you don't know that how the net profit is treated in the balance sheet, where you move it, we can't proceed further, right? So we need a good financial acumen. We need to have good understanding of how the P&L balance sheet and cash flows are integrated, and that's exactly what we're trying to see here. Without that understanding, obviously, and in fact, depending on sectors, it might also vary. Like you took a good example of a banking system. When we create a financial model for a banking sector, it is slightly different because let's say it has to maintain some statutory ratios like capital adequacy ratio is one of the requirements. So it may be saying that it is generating profit, it is having good amount of cash in the bank, but to meet the benchmark ratio of capital adequacy ratio being set up, the company may not be able to use that profit for the declaration of dividend. Quite likely, right? Because the company needs those funds to meet the capital adequacy ratio requirement. So many a times you would notice that depending on the sector, some changes are required to be done in the model to align to the regulatory requirement, right? Now, let us proceed. Use the same concept for accounts receivable, accounts payable, and the other stuff as well. So, what I'm going to do for the accounts receivable is if I put that logic, accounts receivable is going to be equal to AR days multiply by 2 multiply by sales or what you call as revenue divided by 365 minus the AR for previous year. This is what we are going to do for the accounts receivable. Let me put that formula. So it's going to be this as equal to AR days. Go to the assumption tab, which is 72 days multiply by 2 multiply by revenue per day, which is P&L 2019 revenue divided by 365 minus previous year accounts receivable. It becomes this logic out here. So the formula over here is this. This is the formula that I put here, which is taking the AR days into 2 into per day of revenue minus AR for the previous year. Exactly the same logic that we discussed before. Okay, so if you notice what we are doing here, we are taking that in the assumption tab, we assume the revenue or the accounts receivable as 72 days. So we would begin with that, multiply it with 2, and then take the daily revenue. The daily revenue is kind of going to come from the P&L, which is given here, but you see that this is pretty erratic, goes down, stabilizes, and again goes up. So you would see that there is an abnormal trend in the which is visible in the accounts receivable as well, and that's because we have a declining sale, and sometimes after 2 to 3 years it's going to go up. That's why you see that it is moving abruptly in terms of trend. And the prepaid expenses and other current assets, as I mentioned before as well, we're assuming it constant as $22 million because it's pretty small. It's very small. So assume constant. It's going to remain fixed. Right? So the total current assets, I do not have the cash position at the moment, but obviously you can leave it for now. And once we have the cash position at a later stage in our balance sheet, we'll be able to work it out. So just ignore the cash position for now. We will come to the cash position a little later. And let me tell you one thing upfront out here that cash is usually the last item which is included in the financial model. You create your P&L, you complete it, you complete your balance sheet except cash, you go to the cash flow statement, complete that as well. And that is the time when you can bring the cash position from your cash flow statement. So cash is usually the last item that you put in the financial model. And that's something that you would see very soon today once we'll proceed further with the other sheets. All right. Now, whatever logic I've discussed here, you could use it for the current liabilities component as well. So you take the days multiply by 2, multiply by the daily component minus previous year. So if I have to write the formula for accounts payable is going to be 2 or maybe accounts payable days into 2 into raw material cost per day minus accounts previous. So use this logic and put it across out here, which is equal to AP days of 1912 multiply by 2 multiply by raw material cost per day, which is 421 divided by 365 minus the previous year number. That's the formula I put here. The account payable days into 2 into per day of raw material cost minus the previous year accounts payable. Exactly the same logic that we have discussed. And similarly, use this logic for accrued liabilities and the deferred revenue as well. And finally, take the total of current liability. This is going to complete the current assets of the organization. Fair enough? So let me just write the formula for accrued liabilities and deferred revenue as well, and then you can take your time to work it out. So accrued liabilities is equal to the accrued liabilities day, which is this, multiply by 2, multiply by the daily raw material cost, which is this, divided by 365 minus the previous year accrued liability. So here also you see that we have written pretty much the same formula. So in fact, let's do it this way. I'll put the formula here on the right hand side so that you can notice, you can copy it from here. And the last one over here is the deferred revenue, which is the deferred revenue days multiply by 2 into the daily revenue of 703 by 365 minus previous year deferred revenue. And then at the end, you can put the total formula over here as sum of these items. And that completes the current liabilities part. So whatever logic we discussed before, while analyzing the historical balance sheet items, we have picked exactly the same logic to be able to work out these items in our balance sheet. So the projections, like somebody had this question that what is the significance of these days? So now I think you have an answer for that question, that this is the significance of those days, because it is helping us to project these figures in the balance sheet in the current assets and current liabilities line. Okay, so let me take a pause here and allow you to work on it. And then in fact, what we could do, we are done with the file number 4. We can take a break for lunch and be back in about 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes or so. And then we'll move on with the next file that we have as part of this module, right? But just to let you know what we have done till now, just to prepare a summary of it. First of all, we look at the historical P&L and balance sheet. Then you analyze the historical trends and ratios. Then we use the historical data, market trends and other stuff to take assumptions for future. And finally, we use the assumptions to prepare P&L projections, obviously till operating income, till EBITDA line, because we don't have items, we don't have information for the other items. And after that, project the current assets and current liabilities. These two. So this will partially complete the financial model to a certain extent, because the P&L is now completed till EBITDA line and the balance sheet is completed to the extent of working capital covering the current assets and current liabilities, except cash or overdraft positions, because the company will either have cash balance in the bank account or it may have a shortage, which would basically be reflected as a liability under the overdraft line. All right. So let me just put these formulae here, and now as we come after the break, we will proceed further with the next sheet wherein we will have the other items covering the fixed assets capex and also the debt structure part, and then we'll be able to complete our P&L. All right. So let's take a break for 20-25 minutes and be back at 1:20, and then we'll move ahead with the file number 5. And somebody's asking this question, but just for everybody's benefit and clarify, after the completion of session today, I will be saving all of these Excel files which has got the solution in the same drive that the link of which I shared before. So just in case you don't have it, please make a note of it. It is bit.ly/Amardeep hyphen cheating. I'm going to be saving all of the solved version of the Excel files out there. So in case you need the the other files also which I discussed in the class 1 and 2, that is also stored over here. So just use this link for accessing the solved version of the Excel files, which would include these notes and extra data points that I'm covering as part of our discussion. All right. Thank you very much. Let's come back at 1:20. Thank you.